Hi folks, we're here today with Fixing Everything channel. We're working on a 2005 Chevrolet Trailblazer LS two-wheel drive. We're going to be replacing the complete front suspension, and I'm going to show you step by step how to do it. First of all, we're going to need you to jack the vehicle up, support it properly, make sure that you've got a good emergency brake, or at least one wheel chalked. My other side is chalked. Okay folks, next you'll want to go through and go ahead and lube everything. So it makes it easier. You'll have two 21 millimeters up here at the top that are your control arm bolts. You'll have two, mine were 18 millimeters for the top of the strut. I just went through the top side of the engine bay, reached over to get the two 18 millimeters, took them loose. This will be a 15 millimeter for your upper ball joint. This is your sway bar link. That is a 21 millimeter and a T45 torque bit in case the shaft turns while you're trying to take it loose. Same thing for that one. This is another 21 millimeter right here. That is your strut, lower strut support bolt. You'll have a 21 here on the bottom for your lower control arm. On the very bottom of the engine at the control arms, there's three of them. 21 millimeters. I go ahead and grease them up and loosen everything up. You'll have two 10 millimeters here that hold on your brake line. You have this funky little plastic clip here for the ABS line. It's got a little snap right here on this side of it. I just either take a pair of pliers or a screwdriver or something, just pry it on off, pop it open, pull my line out of it. This other one here is a little bit more sophisticated. See if I can get up in there and give y'all a good look. This other one here, you need to press right inside here, this little triangle clip from this way out, and then this piece here will drop down. And then unplug, because you're going to take your control arm all the way off. This is your plug. This has a great clip on it, lock clip. Slide it out that way, press in the clip, and unsnap your line. Brake caliper retainer bolts are a 13 millimeter. 13 millimeter. Pressing your brake pads. Your lower ball joint is another 21 millimeter. After loosening the bolt, the nut all the way up, tap here and here on the opposite side, and it should drop down. On your upper control arm, to make it easier to come out, a lot of people like to beat on them. I don't like to beat on them. I just take and I separate in between here once I get the bolt out of it. And once you do that, the upper ball joint will just pop right out. And I'm going to show you how to do this, removing one thing at a time. First will be the upper control arm. Once I get it out of the way, then I'll show you the strut removal and so on. Alright folks, like I said, we're going to take this apart one piece at a time. I've already got my pry bar wedged in there. My bolt's loose on the upper control arm. And you just take a little hammer and just tap just a tad bit. Well, she should have came off a little easier than that. And let's see. There we go, folks. Alright, that's done. And I'm going to change my upper ball joint before I take everything else the rest of the way loose, because I find it a little bit easier. And I'll show you that here in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and remove these two bolts the rest of the way out of here. That one there, and that one on the other side. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this lower control arm straight out. Okay, here's the lower control arm out, and this is the reason why we're changing this, because this is a common problem that the bushings wear out on the inside of this upper control arm on here. So we're just going to go ahead and replace it. I've done the other side. I just decided I'd go ahead and make a video. I stopped making videos a while back, but I'm going to start back again. So it makes it easier on people that want to do DIY and get some free information. Alright, and next I'm going to go ahead and take this strut right here out in just a few seconds, as soon as I get the bolt down here broke loose. not loose, because it's going to sit hard on this shaft right here, really, really hard. Next, I'm going to go ahead and take my brake caliper off so it can stop pulling tension on my brake line and maybe damaging it. So we're going to go ahead and take it off. I've already pressed back the brake pads, taking the bolts loose, and we're just going to lift it up. And we're going to stick it over here on the frame, or over here somewhere safe that it's not going to bounce on anything. I'll be able to put it back on here in just a few minutes. Okay, since I took the hammer and knocked the lower strut mount off the pin, it's nice and rusty right here, nice crappy rusty. Made it a little hard. We're going to take the nut the rest of the way off, and we'll be able to pull the control arm. I mean the strut right out of there by pushing that sideways, and it should just fall. Okay, I found it easier to go ahead and take the lower part of your sway bar link loose, or the whole sway bar link, take it all the way off so the lower control arm can drop down a little bit further. I suggest if you do it, put a jack up underneath it so it doesn't fall. I always normally hold it, and I hold the pressure, but don't let it be a surprise. It does have pressure on it, and it will drop down, even though it is not as spring loaded like the older vehicles. So the strut is out of the way, and I'm getting ready to go ahead and change the strut out. I'm going to make a mark to where this one sits, because my new one does not come with the bottom post here. Take this bolt here loose, which is an 18 millimeter, and I'm going to make some marks, like I said, line it back up the way it goes in there and put it back in there, and I'll show you that when it's all done. Don't forget, if you take this loose, to wedge you a little screwdriver or pry bar in there, and that'll separate that so the shock will just slide right out. Alright everybody, I'm going to go ahead and, since I got my strut out the way, I've already changed the bottom post on it. I'm going to go ahead and take this upper ball joint out. There's a little lock ring that sits around the outside of it. I'm going to take a screwdriver and just put it on one of the edges of it and tap it out. Do not forget to take that out, or this will be a hard job for you. Okay, I've knocked my little snap ring off. I'm going to use this handy dandy ball joint front end removal tool from the local auto parts store. You can rent it for $159. Bam, there it goes. Spray a little lubrication on it and it'll be a lot easier. Now, since I got the upper ball joint out, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up right here real good with a little bit of wire brush and hit that sandpaper a little bit inside there. And then I'm going to reinstall my new ball joint. I'm going to apply a little bit of grease on the ball joint around it before I press it in. Okay folks, now that I got it all greased up, I got it stuck into place. I've got my tool on it. I'm going to go ahead and drive her on in. I've got my upper ball joint in place, my lock and snap ring on, my Alamite or search fitting on the bottom for the grease. I always put a little bit of grease in here before I put pressure on it, because a lot of these don't come charged. Okay, and my next step is I'm just going to go ahead and remove the whole spindle and set it down on the ground so I can do my lower control arm. Okay, I've taken the bottom ball joint bolt off of it since I already broke it loose. I've lifted it off of it and I've set it to the side. And now I'm going to take the lower control arm off. That would be done with the 3 bolts that are on the bottom, the 21 millimeters at the bottom. All of mine are loose. I'm just going to finger loosen them out, and I'm going to pull this straight out. Okay, after installing your strut, I stick it up in there and put 2 nuts on the top of it first, and then I put it on the lower control arm. We're going to go ahead and add the sway bar link back in, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten up the top strut bolts, and I'm going to add the spindle arm, and then I'm going to do my tie rod in. And make sure everything's tight after I get done. I've got to tighten these bolts up here that need to be tightened from the new kit on the lower ball control arm. These are kind of really loose, so they need to be tightened up, and I'm going to tighten all those up, and we'll be finished up here in probably about the next 15-20 minutes. Okay folks, make sure when everything is on, you've got everything good and tight. I always put my Alamite or Zert greasings to one side, that way when I go to grease, they're easy to access. I've only got 3 on this kit here. 4 altogether, I'm sorry. Upper ball joint, sway bar link 2, and then the tie rod end. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my spindle back on and button everything up. I hope this has severely helped you. The other side should be the same way. It should also be the same way on the 4-wheel drive. The only difference is you're going to have a 35 millimeter bolt to break the CV axle loose through the middle of the spindle. Thank you. If you like this video, hit like on the bottom and please subscribe.